In this video, get ready to learn about all the amazing new gradient tools that we have access to in the new Wallpaper Stack. So I don't know if you've ever tried to create a gradient, right? Where you take multiple colors and try to create something that looks nice. I'd say a lot of times it's tough, right? It's tough getting that really perfect gradient. So what I wanted to do in Wallpaper is to make it easy for you, right? So I want to make it easy for you to have access to beautiful gradients that are pre-made for you out of the box. And I think I've done exactly that. I'm really excited to show you. Let's jump in and look at all the amazing things that we could do with gradients inside Wallpaper. So here I have just a vanilla wallpaper stack. I've added in a bit of content so it looks pretty, right? And one thing I did is I've just nicked the variable setting so that it's 60% height so that when we preview this page, it looks nice and big and we can kind of see the background in all of its glory, right? Before I get started, just want to let you know in this video, we're only going to be covering the gradients and I have two other videos on patterns and all of the layout settings. So make sure that you check those out. In this video, we're only going to be reviewing the gradient settings. So without further ado, we're going to go to Wallpaper and you'll notice that there is a gradient feature. Let's go ahead and turn that on. Boom, right? Blow us up. Look at this amazing gradient. It's very colorful, probably not something I use all the time, but it is very fun and it can be very nice to use. But if we go to this gradient setting, we'll notice that there are tons, over 180, almost 200 gradients that you have access to. And you have to admit that it's kind of hard to know. Like, what is plum plate? Oh, look, plum plate's quite nice. How would I have known that? Well, when you purchase Wallpaper, you will notice that there are multiple stacks that ship with Wallpaper. We have the Wallpaper Stack, the main stack. Then we have two other stacks that allow you to browse the patterns and the gradients. So since we're talking about gradients, let's go ahead and add the gradients browser to the edit mode. And here you'll notice that we have access to view all of the gradients that we have within Wallpaper, right? Very cool. So this gives us a really quick, easy way of perusing all the gradients that are available within Wallpaper. We can find the name of it and then go to the Wallpaper Stack and select the exact gradient that we want. Now you don't need to worry, this gradient browser does not preview, it doesn't get published at all. So when you preview the page, you'll notice that it's not there, right? It only exists and lives inside edit mode. Now if you want, you can turn off scroll samples and it will just turn into one big old list if you like it, if you prefer that. So you see there's a lot of really great, depending on your color scheme of your site, there's some really great gradients here. Now, one thing to point out, if you're worried about old browser compatibility that don't support gradients, because there are some really ancient browsers that obviously don't support gradients, the background color is used, right? Now, you're not going to notice this background color until, if you turn off the gradient, right? But if you turn on the gradient and your browser supports it, you're going to see the gradient. But this background color is definitely still used to fall back for browsers that don't support gradients. Now, the next thing that we have control over is something called a vignette. And if you use this, you'll notice that it brings you a nice, vignette look, kind of an inner shadow. Sometimes the default color, black can be very jarring, right? It kind of looks like makes it look like it's inset on the page. That's not really what we want, right? So what we can do is we can customize the color of that vignette as well. So, we can go ahead and make that kind of a darker purple. Maybe give it, some opacity so that it's not quite as strong. But that gives us a very nice effect where it kind of zones in on the middle of the wallpaper, the content. By having this vignette in there, it definitely draws the eyes to the center because our eyes are drawn to the lighter components of the page. So by adding a vignette, it's going to definitely draw our attention to this middle part of the page. Let's preview it to get more of an effect. So as you see here on the page, we have this vignette that really draws our eyes to the center content, to the content right in the middle of the stack, right? So even though we have a gradient, we kind of add some more variation to this gradient with this vignette. It's a very great effect. Now, while I'm not going to review patterns in this video, I just want to stress that you can mix and match gradients and patterns together, right? So if you turn on both of those features, right, you have access to actually have a pattern on top of your gradient. So the last setting that we have available to us is position, okay? And they're static and fixed. Now I might be wondering, normally we think of fixed position as something that's used for images, right? Where, the image is fixed on the background. How does that work with gradients? Well, let's have a look. So here I've changed things up a little bit. I've added some content to the page just so that we can kind of scroll up and down the page a little bit. And I've set both of them just to use this wide matrix gradient, purely so that we can really see how it differs between static position and fixed position. Now the settings for these are identical. The only thing that's different is I've changed the background position from static to fixed. So if we go down to this one down here, we'll notice that it's position fixed. Okay, let's go ahead and preview the page. So if you notice up here at the top, I have my nice banner up at the top and, with this kind of crazy gradient. And if I scroll, you'll notice that it's just static, right? The background fills that container, the gradient fills that container, and that's it, right? But if we scroll down the page, you'll notice that the wallpaper now, because the gradient is fixed, the gradient is applied to the background of the browser, okay? And as we scroll down or up the page, okay, we'll notice that we get this really, really cool effect that the gradient is changing as we're scrolling. Now, this is a very drastic effect, right? Because, we're going from an orange all the way to a blue. But we can get some really great subtle effects as well with some of the other gradients. Now here I've switched to the black sea gradient and I've set actually both wallpapers to be fixed so you can kind of see what the scrolling effect looks like. As I scroll down, you'll notice that it's not extreme, it's subtle, right? But we have a very nice transition of the color of the gradient, right? So it's not as drastic as before, but it's a very nice visual effect. It kind of almost looks like an animation, right, on the page. So as you see, we can really leverage these gradients to give us a very nice, very stylistic page. Now there's one last feature I almost forgot to mention, and that is, well, what if you don't like any of the gradients that Wallpaper has? Like, it is possible. There are 200 gradients, but there might be something that doesn't really fit with your design. And you're like, Joe, like, I want to tweak it. I want to use my own colors. How can I do that? Well, we're lucky because Wallpaper supports custom CSS gradients as well. And let's see how we can do those. So if we head back into RapidWeaver, you'll notice that on the gradient setting, we can go all the way up to the top and look at there's custom CSS. Now, if you look at the setting there for custom CSS, you might think that's Greek, Joe, to me. I don't understand CSS at all. Why are you expecting me to do this? I'm not, okay? So if you look at the tooltip for the custom CSS, you'll notice that I reference a URL here, a site called gradient.com. Now there are a ton of CSS gradient generators out there that you can use. I happen to enjoy this website. They have a bunch of pre-built ones as well. You can also customize the ones that you see there. So if you go ahead and click on this, you can change the angles, right? You can go ahead and click on this and modify the colors. So you can really, it's kind of a live gradient editor directly inside the browser. It's pretty cool. Now, if you hover over, you'll notice at the top left corner, there is a copy CSS button. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And what that does is it takes the CSS code that you need and puts it on your clipboard. Now, if we go back into RapidWeaver, I simply need to paste that code into the custom CSS setting, and we're good to go. I now have my custom gradient that I got from gradient.com directly, and I can see it right now inside edit mode. So that does it for the gradient part of Wallpaper. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure that you check out the other videos that we have on the patterns and the layout settings for Wallpaper. It's a very powerful stack. It's going to really allow you to make your website shine, right? With those subtle gradients, if you overlay patterns on top of them, it's just beautiful. You can make some really stunning things with this. And make sure that you share the sites that you build with Wallpaper, because I'd love to see some of the beautiful things that you do with it. So until then, we will talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.